You said politics you're not that into, you care more about culture, but Dr. Phil, politics is the culture in a lot of ways, and the culture is the politics, right? So I wish we didn't have the culture wars that we have, but we do. And now oftentimes they're used to distract us. So while the politicians then serve their donors, et cetera. But so, for example, you said government is too big, but too big how, right? So for example, is the government too big when it says you can't get an abortion? Because that's the government getting between a woman and her doctor and saying, I'm going to make the most personal decision of your lifetime for you. Big government's going to do that. The people who say that they're for small government support that decision, and that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. But I say it this way. I've dealt for 20 plus years on the air and 45 years in my professional career with people that oftentimes make, I think, a huge mistake of inviting the government into their lives. Like I have people come on and they got a marital situation that's falling apart. They have children. They have a custody dispute, and one or both of them say, "Well, we'll just go to court and let them decide." And I go, "Oh no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to invite the government into your private life if you can keep from it. You need to go sit down and try to resolve this. Get a private mediator if you have to." But that judge up there, he or she is not King Solomon. And they're just human beings. And they're in particular, they're not trained in this particular area. So when I say government's too big, we are to blame. We invite government into our lives too much. You'll have a judge up there, and maybe he or she has a son or daughter that went through a divorce and got burned in a custody situation. Maybe the week before, they've got a chip on their shoulder, and here you are in a similar situation, and they take it out on you. You have no idea what you're getting into in a situation like that. When I say government's too big, I'm talking about that kind of thing. We have so many people in government that are not elected and can't be unelected that are dictating the outcome in our lives because they're bureaucrats that are appointed into positions passing regulations that are affecting our lives, whether it's in the IRS or whether it has to do with state regulations concerning what we're able to do with whether it's how we take out our trash or what we do in our schools. These aren't people that we elected.
The Federal Reserve?
Exactly, the Federal Reserve. Yeah. These are people that were appointed, and it's real hard to fire them. So we've got people that we didn't choose that are dictating so much of what happens in our lives.
But we do need rules. So for example, you got you mentioned the IRS. If you don't have enough rules at the IRS, well, the rich are going to cheat on their taxes, and they do. Right? So then, for example, Biden in the beginning brought in a lot more IRS agents because the rich were, it's not anti-rich, right? You want to be rich, fantastic, I love it, I want to be rich, right? But it's when you got people cheating on their taxes and it's costing us billions and billions of dollars, you need some law enforcement, you need some rules. So it seems to me it's a balancing act. It's not that, hey, I want big government or I want small government. What's the task at hand? You see what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know that is not more of a marketing slogan than it is a reality. I mean, are you really going to fix the problem by taxing the rich? It seems to me that I've seen, look, I can't add 2 and 2 and get 5 every time, so I'm not a math whiz. I can read and write real fast, but I'm not good at economics. But I've read an awful lot of studies that say when the tax rates go down, tax revenue goes up because it stimulates the economy. And there are.
But so, Dr. Phil, I get what you're saying. Look, I know that.
But why penalize?
Hold on, let me jump in.
Let me finish my thought, though.
Yeah.
Let me finish my thought. There is a punitive element that people there are haves and have-nots, and there are more have-nots than there are haves, right? You agree with that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so if you can go to the have-nots and demonize the haves, and look, and I'm not one of those that I don't have, most of my income's ordinary income. So it's taxed just like everybody else. I'm not one of those that, you know, owns factories and all this stuff so you can write everything off. But if you demonize those people, then you can go to the have-nots and say, yeah, look, those guys aren't paying their fair share, so we're gonna, you know, in this country, we've had as high as 90% marginal tax rate during the Eisenhower administration. It was
but
91%.
we also grew the largest middle class in the world when we had between 70 and 90, highest marginal tax rate.
Yeah, because the base rate was 4 to 6% during that time.
Yeah, but you see, now we're having a conversation about what the right rules are and what the right numbers are. And I should clarify, there actually is not more have-nots than there are haves. It's the largest group is in the middle, right? So the middle class
but there
has
have-nots
something
compared to the
rich,
the ultra billionaires.
Yeah, but it's the middle class that pays for most things. And it's the middle class that works the hardest, gets taxed the most as a percentage, et cetera. So when you say, like Anna just did a segment yesterday about how homelessness in California
has exploded.
Yeah, we gave $24 billion here in California, and it went up 53% from 2013
Homelessness
to now.
went up 50. Let me jump in because I'm dying to look.
Get in here.
I agree with you in regard to the rhetoric and the class war stuff and demonizing people and how that doesn't really lead to a good outcome. However, I think the frustration that a lot of middle class, hardworking, tax-paying Americans are feeling is just this unfairness in the system where if you are an ordinary worker in America and you get one thing wrong on your taxes, the IRS will be knocking on your door and they will audit you. My first year at TYT, I'm making $24,000, okay? I made one small mistake because at first
allegedly.
Well, here's what my mistake was. At first, I got hired as a private contractor, and then halfway through that year, they brought me on payroll. So all of a sudden, I'm W-2, whatever. One of my tax forms I never got. So when I reported my income, one of the tax forms, I didn't report some of my income, but that wasn't intentional. Anyway,
allegedly,
they were $24,000. That was my income that year. IRS knocking on my door. They want to audit me. And so when I see the offshore bank accounts, when I see all of the tricky pizzicky things that are happening with the ultra rich, where they're not paying their fair share and they're getting away with it oftentimes when the IRS suspects that they're dodging their taxes because auditing them is a lot more expensive and complicated than auditing, a bozo like me. It leads to division in the country, anger in the country. And I've actually changed my mind a little bit about how, if we just tax the rich, all of our problems will go away. I disagree with that because I just saw what happened in California. I just saw what happened with $24 billion in our taxpayer money. They squandered it. They didn't use it on the homeless. They funneled it to nonprofits that fattened up their own pockets and lived nice, lavish lives. Furious about that. So I understand the other side of the argument as well in regard to the waste and the mismanagement of our money. But can you at least understand where the frustration that middle class taxpayers are feeling is coming from?
Oh, I totally understand it. And listen, I started high school living in an apartment with no utilities because we couldn't afford the deposits. So and it's painful to pay those income taxes. And I've had the same accountant for 50 years. I think I got $118 back on my first short form, and the fee was a cheeseburger. He said, "This is a short form. Can you not figure this out?" And I mean, do they still have the short form?
I'm not sure. I haven't done a short form for so long.
I know, but I did the first one, and I got back $118 or something. I've had the same guy for 50 years, still have him today. But my point is, it's not just the ultra rich. There are those that work hard and they create jobs, and they take that working capital and they expand with it and do good things. And you say poo-poo that it doesn't stimulate the economy with lower tax rates. If you got more working capital, you put it in there. Now there are those. I suppose there are billionaires that pay zero income tax because of
deductions.
Then change the tax laws.
Agreed, but that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. Even when you have someone like Donald Trump, who did pass a tax bill in 2017, said that he was going to close corporate tax loopholes while lowering the corporate tax rate, lowered the corporate tax rate, didn't get rid of the loopholes. And so you have tremendously successful companies like Amazon paying nothing in federal taxes. And when I look at my tax bill, and I remember that Amazon paid nothing in federal taxes, I feel real angry.
Yeah,
like
that doesn't.
Real angry.
That doesn't make sense. I don't know what did Amazon pay zero?
Zero taxes
in 1 year, yeah. And for a long stretch they paid nothing. And so in the beginning they were losing money, so I get it, right? But then they were spectacularly wealthy and still paying zero taxes.